Hi guys, I hope you're all doing well today, and I hope you're ready to make some Alfredo sauce, okay? I'm actually going to make chicken Alfredo. So, just like usual, let's go ahead and go over our ingredients and our equipment that we're going to need in order to make our Alfredo sauce. All right? So, I'm making chicken Alfredo, so I have some boneless, skinless chicken breasts, okay, to go with my chicken Alfredo. Then I have some heavy whipping cream, so 1 quart heavy whipping cream. Some Parmesan cheese, okay, this is about ½ pound, so 8 ounces of Parmesan cheese. I like to use the wedges, and I will grate this fresh. Okay, we'll go over doing that soon. A lemon, some fresh parsley, some minced garlic. If you have garlic cloves, we'll go ahead and mince those. I'm going to use the ready minced stuff. Some pepper, some salt. And I like to do Cajun chicken Alfredo, so I'm going to use some Cajun seasoning to season up my chicken with, okay? For equipment, you're going to need a fairly deep pot, okay, to do your sauce in. A whisk to stir. A bowl to hold your cheese in after it's grated. A smaller bowl that we're going to put some lemon juice in, so we get some juice out of our lemon. A cheese grater, and we're actually going to be using kind of the smaller side here, okay? We don't want to use the grater side that's rough both ways when you do it. We don't want to use the slicer, and we don't want to have too big. So we're going to actually use this end here, which is the smaller, it's got the smaller holes, okay? And if I rub up, it's not rough, but if I were to rub down, it may cut me. So don't rub down on it, but that side of your cheese grater or that size, okay? And then I have another mat that I'm going to use to catch some lemon zest, okay? So we want to go ahead, and there's a lot of prep work that goes into making Alfredo sauce before we actually even go over to the stove, okay? So the first thing that I'm going to do actually is I'm going to prepare my chicken so that I can get it into my oven and get it baking while I make the rest of my sauce, okay? Because once you get this down, you should be able to pretty much get it to finish all at about the same time, okay? So your chicken will go in the oven eventually at 375 degrees for about 20 minutes or so. And once you get it down, it'll take you about 20 minutes in order to make your Alfredo sauce, okay? So it'll all get done at about the same time. So I have my boneless, skinless chicken breast here. And the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna kind of clean it up a little bit, okay? So let me kind of tilt you down here so you can see what I'm doing. I'm gonna move my other stuff away from it because I don't want any cross-contamination, okay? And what I mean by that is that boneless, skinless chicken breast, any chicken, can have salmonella bacteria, okay? And if I am working with my chicken and I'm, messing around and some of the juice splashes over on something else, some of that bacteria can get onto my other things. And then when you go and handle that, you're getting it on your hands, and then you eat something, right? And you end up getting sick from salmonella. So we want to be careful. We want to wash our hands whenever we're working with any kind of raw meat, especially chicken, because it can make you sick, okay? But the first thing I'm going to do is the chicken breasts come, and they're boneless, skinless, and they're really a pretty lean piece of meat, okay? But if you look at it, sometimes you get these little pieces of like yellow fat, right? And what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna use my fingers. I'm just gonna pick that off, okay? and it pulls off pretty easily. I'm just going to throw that right into my garbage I have right next to me. I'm just going to go around, I'm just going to pick that off and clean up my chicken breast, okay? So I'm going to go around, peel all that off, and then as I do that, I also want to kind of flip it over. So you have kind of your smooth side here, and then the other side looks a little bit rougher, okay? That's where they separated it from the chicken. And I want to just kind of feel around back there and check to make sure that there's no pieces of cartilage or bone stuck to that part of my chicken, okay? So I'm just going to kind of use my fingers. I'm going to kind of look around and feel around there and just make sure that there's no hard bone or cartilage. And if there is, what I would do is I would just use my knife and remove that, okay, without wasting any meat. Or try to waste, try not to get very much meat in there as you trim that off, okay? So I feel that one doesn't have any cartilage or bone. So I'm just going to pick off the rest of this fat. And it doesn't have to be perfectly clean, okay? You can leave a little bit on there. It's not going to hurt you. It's actually pretty lean. So if you see like this here in the middle, I'm going to leave that. I'm not even going to bother with it, okay? Because it's not going to hurt you. You won't even be able to tell it's there once the chicken cooks, okay? So I'm going to go through. I'm going to pick off the fat for all my chicken. Check to make sure that there's no cartilage or bone. And then we'll move on to the next part. All right, so go ahead and do that with your chicken if you're working with chicken. If you are working with shrimp, to do a shrimp Alfredo, just make sure that they are shelled and pop off the little end of the tail from the rest of the shrimp at this time, okay? Okay, so I've got my chicken cleaned up, right? I picked off all the large pieces of fat, and I went ahead and washed my hands, okay? So you haven't washed your hands yet, you want to do that right now, okay? And then from this point on, I'm going to designate a chicken hand, okay? So just like it sounds, this is going to be my hand that handles the chicken from this point on while I season my chicken, okay? So I'm right-handed, and I want to season with my right hand, so I'm going to designate my left hand as my chicken hand. So now I'm going to be aware that this is the only hand that I'm going to handle my chicken with. If you have to handle with both hands, that's okay. Just go and wash your hands again before you handle anything else, again, to avoid that cross-contamination, okay? So, I'm going to just season my chicken with a little bit of salt, pepper, and Cajun. If you want to do more of an Italian chicken, I would suggest some salt and maybe some basil and oregano or some Italian seasoning, okay? So, in order to season my chicken with salt, I'm just going to take a little bit of salt. I'm going to put it in the palm of my hand, okay? So that I can grab a pinch of it, okay? And I'm just going to season over top of my chicken. I'm going to use my fingers and my thumb. I'm just going to kind of give a pinch, and I'm going to give my chicken a good seasoning with salt, okay? Salted. Any little bit of excess you have left there, you shouldn't have too much. You can just kind of scrape onto your chicken, the board that you're using. So you can see it's kind of right here. I wouldn't put it right on your chicken because you don't want it to get too salty. Now I'm going to use my chicken hand, right? And I'm going to flip over my chicken. I'm going to salt the other side. So, flip it over. Then I'm going to do the same thing. Okay, I'm going to pour my chicken using my clean hand into the palm of my hand, my salt into the palm of my hand, and just grab a pinch. The higher up you hold it, the less concentrated it will be in one place. So I recommend holding it up, about 10 inches to a foot from your chicken as you sprinkle it on. It helps to more evenly distribute it, okay? So I've seasoned that side. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and shake on some pepper. using my clean hand. Okay, so just a little bit of pepper. Again, I'm going to use my chicken hand. I'm going to flip it. Pepper the other side. And your seasoning is all your preference, of course, okay? So I wouldn't get too carried away with it. You don't want it to be too overpowering, but okay, salt, pepper, and now I'm going to use my Cajun, okay? The Cajun is going to be my main seasoning, so I'm going to go a little bit heavier with that. I'm just going to shake that over my chicken as well, so that I have my Cajun chicken. Again, you want a good coating, but you don't want it to be so overpowering that you can't eat your chicken. Okay. Now keep in mind that the Alfredo sauce is going to absorb some of that flavor. So you can have a pretty decent amount of your seasoning on there. Okay. I'm going to flip it over again and get the other side. If you don't have Cajun seasoning, you can also use Creole seasoning. It's basically the same thing. I have a little bit more salt in the actual Creole seasoning. So if you're going to use that, I wouldn't put as much salt on your chicken, okay? So Creole or blackened seasoning kind of has a similar flavoring, okay? So I've seasoned up my chicken. I'm going to go ahead and add it onto an oven-safe pan so that it can cook, okay? You probably want to put just a thin little layer of olive oil on the bottom of your pan. It'll just help it not to stick, or spray it with some Pam. If you have stoneware or anything like that that you're using, you don't have to do that, all right? So I've seasoned up my chicken. That's ready for me to put in the oven at 375 for about 20 minutes or so. All right, so once you have that all ready, we're gonna go on to our next preparation, all right? All right, so we've got the chicken all prepared, ready to go, okay? You'll go ahead and place that in the oven at 375, like I said, for about 20 minutes or so. Now I've gone ahead and I've cleaned up my area a little bit. You see I don't have my spices over here anymore. I like to have a nice clean area to work in. Okay, I've also gone ahead and I've washed off my lemon and I've washed off my parsley, okay? Those are going to be the next two things that we are going to prepare. All right, so first thing we're going to do is prepare my lemon zest and my lemon juice, okay? I actually need to grab my chef's knife real quick. Okay, so I've got my chef's knife. We're going to go ahead and do our lemon first. So we need a couple tablespoons of lemon zest, okay? So now, in order to make a lemon zest, if you have a zester, which is a long, narrow thing, okay? And it has a handle, and usually you put it down and you would rub your lemon on it, and that makes zest. Since probably not everybody has a zester, I'm going to show you that you can use the same side we're going to use of your grater, okay? What I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my lemon, and I'm going to rub it against the grate, okay? And I'm going to turn it every once in a while because I don't want to get the pith of the lemon in there, okay? I just want the zest on the outside, okay? So I don't want to get down into the white pith of the lemon peel, okay? So I'm going to go ahead, I'm just going to grate that, and as I do it, I'm going to turn my lemon. I'm doing it over top of my mat because my lemon zest should be falling down onto my mat inside of my grater, okay? So you can see, I'm just kind of rubbing it a little bit, and then I'm going to turn it. I rub it and I turn it, okay? As you can see, I'll show you, it's just getting the very outside of the lemon. It's not getting way down into all the white pith of it, okay? So I'm going to do that. Okay, I'm going to give my grater a little tap. Just get some down there. And then I'm going to check and see how much lemon zest I have. Okay, you see here, I'm going to kind of scrape it together here. Like I said, you want to have, about a tablespoon. Actually, will probably do pretty well. This is probably a pretty good amount. Okay, so you can see here. So the zest, a little bit of it goes a long way. So that's probably about 1 tablespoon of lemon zest. You can certainly put it into a tablespoon just to measure it and see if that's where we're at. So I have my tablespoon here. Put it in there. That's pretty close. I can still use a little bit more, so if that's the case, just bring your grater back over. Find the areas that you haven't gotten yet of your lemon. And just go around and continue to scrape it off until you get your desired amount of lemon zest. And it'll smell really good. It smells that citrusy lemon smell. Okay, so that's going to be pretty good. All right. So you can see a little bit less than a tablespoon. Like I said, a little bit of it will go a long way, okay? So that's probably about what you want to have right there. Okay, a couple teaspoons probably. Okay. So I have that. I'm going to place that to the side. I'm going to use my knife to scrape things over. Now neither of these are in a danger of cross-contaminating because they're both fresh. This is a fresh herb. And I have a fresh fruit here that I'm using this from. So you don't have to worry so much about not using the same mat or cleaning it in between, okay? So now I'm just going to take my parsley, okay? This is a flat Italian parsley. I'm going to take off, a good bunch of my leaves here at the end of it. So I'm just going to kind of pull those off. Okay, you don't want to get way down into the stem. I want to use mostly the leaves, so I'm going to go through, I'm going to pull off some leaves, I'm going to put those down on my mat. If you get a little bit of the leaf stem in there, like this, it's okay, right? What I'm meaning is you don't want to get all this stuff down here, okay? So this is just going to top off your Alfredo at the very end, okay? So, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use my knife and kind of just that up a little bit, okay? Just kind of hold on to it and just kind of tear through it, okay, with your knife. It doesn't have to be real finely chopped, but when you go to serve your dish, this is kind of your last little addition to it, just to, it adds a little bit of color, adds a little bit of flavor, but it makes it look nice, okay? So go through, get that to my desired size. I'm always using my knife kind of as a tool to kind of scrape it together as I do this. So I'll chop through it, and then I go back through and I scrape with my knife, okay? I'll chop through it, go back through and scrape it together with my knife. Any large pieces. And I think that's pretty good, okay? So I'll use that to sprinkle over when I'm done at the end, okay, with my parsley. So I'm gonna go ahead and clean my knife by doing this, okay, kind of scraping it off. If you want to rinse it off, if you don't have the same kind of cutting board, you can go ahead and rinse it off. Like I said, you don't really have to worry about the danger of cross-contamination, okay? So now we're gonna go ahead and get some lemon juice, all right? So, I'm going to take my lemon, the same lemon that I was getting my zest off of. You can see that it is, you know, it's missing quite a bit of its peel. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and use my chef's knife. I'm going to cut it in half, right? Like a hot dog one half, right? So, this way, all right? And I'm just going to go ahead and use my thumb and my forefingers, okay? And I'm going to give it a squeeze and turn. So I kind of squeeze and twist at the same time. Squeeze and twist. Squeeze and twist. Squeeze and twist. Squeeze and twist, okay? Until you get your lemon juice out of your lemon. All right, so I've gotten that one. You can see, gotten all the juice. The pulp has come out, okay? Set that to the side. I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. If you're having a hard time squeezing it, you can also use a fork. So if you take and stick a fork inside of it and kind of give it a turn, or if you have a juicer, by all means you can use that as well, okay? Okay, so I've gotten all the juice out of that side. Now, you can see I've got some seeds floating around in there, okay? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use a fork and I'm just gonna kind of scoop those seeds out. So I have a fork, just take your seeds, scrape and scoop out any large seeds or any large pieces of pulp. You want to have your juice left over, okay? All right, there we go. I've got my lemon juice. Okay, I'm going to set that to the side. I have my lemon zest and my parsley. That is all set. My seeds, I'm going to go ahead and throw in the garbage, okay? And then we'll be back to prepare our cheese. Okay, we are going to go ahead and grate the most important part of our recipe, okay? So our Parmesan cheese. So I have my small grater here, right? Remember using that small end. And you're just going to take your cheese wedge, okay? You're just going to rub it along there until you grate up your entire wedge of cheese, okay? So go ahead and do that. So as I do that, be careful not to hit your fingers on there, okay? And then I like to just kind of turn it and make sure that I'm hitting the corners, okay? It makes it a little bit easier to grate your cheese, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and just continue to grate that. As it gets too full, right, you can lift this up and go ahead and put it into your bowl. All right, so as it gets full, now this isn't very full, of course, but I would go ahead and just add it right into your bowl that you're going to be using to add your cheese once we get started with actually cooking the sauce, okay? So go ahead, continue to grate your cheese, and we'll be right back, all right? All right, guys, so you can see I've got my cheese all shredded, right? It's all ready to go. Now we're gonna need about 2 cups, maybe a smidge more, and that's kind of on your preference. You know, how cheesy you want it for Alfredo sauce. So I'm going to measure out 2 cups and just put it into a smaller bowl so that I have it ready to go. So I'm going to just kind of take my cheese, pile it into my cup, so I have kind of a heaping cup. Okay, so there's 1. And there's 2. Okay, and honestly, I only have a little smidge left, okay? So I'll probably use the rest of this, or when we make our marinara sauce on Thursday, it's good to use Parmesan cheese. You can top off your pasta dish at the end. So it's up to you, okay? So you can either save it like that, so you have it for that, or add it to your Alfredo, okay? It's up to you. I have my 2 cups of Parmesan cheese. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and keep that in here just because I'm going to use it all instead of the little bowl. Okay. I also had forgotten to tell you one of the most important parts is to grab a stick of salted butter. Okay, so you need a stick of salted butter and a little bit of flour just to act as a thickening agent. Okay, so all of our ingredients now, we are going to go ahead and go over and take them to our stovetop area, okay? So our counter next to our stove. So we're going to take over our heavy whipping cream, our flour, our salted butter, our garlic, cheese, may have already said that, our lemon juice, lemon zest, and our parsley, okay? The rest of your parsley, you're going to want to save because we're going to use that on Friday to make our lasagna, okay? So go ahead, transfer those over to your cooking area, and we'll be right back. All right, guys, so I've gotten all of my stuff transferred over to my cooking area, okay? So hopefully you guys can see what I'm doing here, okay? So the first thing we're going to start with, okay, we're going to turn our stove on to about medium, okay? And we have our pot here on our stove at medium. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my stick of salted butter and I'm going to let that melt in my pot, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and add that. I'm going to let that melt in there. Bring it a little closer here to see. Okay, so I'm letting that melt. Just keep it on medium and let that melt in there, okay? And then once that melts down, what we're going to do is we're going to add our minced garlic, okay? About 3 tablespoons is what I would recommend. I'm going to add more, but like I said, I like to cook with garlic and I like my things pretty garlicky. So I'm going to add, more than 3 tablespoons, and you'll see that here in a moment, okay? Once our butter melts. So we're gonna go ahead and let that melt, and then we'll go on to our next step, and I'll show you about adding the garlic and some of the other stuff. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and let that melt. I'm gonna take a look and see how you're doing, and we'll be right back. Okay, you can see that that's getting pretty well melted. Okay, you wanna make sure that you're here and you're keeping an eye on your things. Butter will burn very easily. So now that that's melted, I'm gonna go ahead and add my minced garlic. Okay, so 3 tablespoons of minced garlic. You can just kind of dip your tablespoon into the garlic and measure it out that way, okay? I'm gonna add more than 3 tablespoons. So I'm gonna use a fork. I'm just gonna add about 1, 2, 3. And now those were heaping things with my fork, so I know that that was a little bit more than 3 tablespoons. All right. So I've added my garlic. I'm gonna go ahead and use my whisk. Okay, I'm going to use a whisk. I'm going to go ahead and whisk that around. And I'm going to let that cook in that butter until it gets nice and fragrant. And you'll see it'll start to sizzle a little bit. Okay. And it doesn't take very long. You don't want to burn your garlic. Burnt garlic is very overpowering, and it will take over the rest of your dish, okay? So it'll mess up the rest of your dish. So you do want to keep a pretty good eye on it. Just going to continue to whisk that around a little bit. While that's doing that, I'm going to go ahead and prepare my heavy cream, okay? So go ahead and get your lid off of there and the little plug that's in there taken out. Okay, so that's been sizzling a little bit. That's nice and fragrant. It's looking good. I'm going to go ahead and add my heavy cream. Okay, I'm going to turn my heat down just a little bit because dairy is one of those things, just like butter. You know, butter is made out of dairy. It will burn if you get it too hot. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and add my quart of heavy cream. Go ahead and add the whole thing. So I've gotten that added. I'm going to go ahead and whisk that together to mix it. All right, so we've gotten like our garlic butter kind of mixed in there with our heavy cream. We're gonna wait for that to bubble, okay? As soon as that first starts to bubble, okay, I'm going to add my lemon zest and my lemon juice, okay? So we're gonna wait for that to give a little bubble. Again, you wanna stick around and kind of keep an eye on it because you don't want it to burn. When you're whisking, okay, anytime you're using heavy cream as your base, which I like to use for like macaroni and cheese, any of the cheese sauces, things like that, you want to actually hit the bottom of your pan with your whisk so you can hear that sound. Okay, I don't want to be up here. Hear the difference? I'm up here, I'm not hitting the bottom. I want to get down, I want to hit the bottom of my pan, and it kind of scrapes the bottom of your pan. It will keep that cream from burning onto the bottom of your pan, okay? If you cook this at too high of a temperature or you don't hit the bottom of your pan, it's gonna burn onto the bottom, and you'll be able to tell because when you are done, it's gonna be difficult to clean your pan, okay? It's gonna make it very difficult. Plus, you don't wanna get that burnt taste in your Alfredo sauce, okay? So, I'm going to go ahead and keep doing that until it bubbles. Like I said, once it first bubbles, it'll start steaming and it'll get that first little bubble. I'm going to add my zest and my lemon juice, okay? You'll be able to tell because it'll start getting a little bit foamier. It gets a little bit thinner, right? As it heats up, it's going to thin. And that's what we're going to use our 3 tablespoons or so of flour for once we get towards the end. It acts as a thickening agent just to help it stick to your noodles and stuff. And you'll judge that based on how thin it is, okay? That'll determine how much flour we're going to add. But you wouldn't want to take a fettuccine noodle, go to pick it up and hope that you have sauce, and then all of that sauce just runs off of it, okay? You want it to be a little bit thicker so that it will actually stick to your noodle and add all of that flavor, okay? And continue to wait for it to bubble up. Okay. Takes a little bit of patience. Looks like I have a brown piece of garlic in there. That's all that is. Yeah. Yep. So sometimes when they do the garlic, you'll get like a piece of the stem or whatever, and it'll look brown, right? It's not going to hurt you. It's okay. So it's nothing to worry about. For aesthetic purposes, I just went ahead and took it out just because it doesn't look as appetizing, okay? You can go ahead and bring some salt and pepper over to your area as well, because you're going to salt and pepper it at the end to your taste, okay? So depending on how much salt and pepper you want to add. I just grabbed a spoon for my flour, okay? I do have salt and pepper over here, so I have my salt and some pepper, okay? Continue to whisk this, making sure I hit the bottom. It also keeps that butter incorporated in there so that it's not separating. So I can see it starting to steam a little bit. So that kind of gives me a little hint that pretty soon it's probably going to give that first little bubble that I'm looking for, so that I can add my lemon zest and my lemon juice, okay? All right, I'm going to continue to do this until it bubbles up. That first little bubble. You see it's getting a little bit frothier. You can see the steam starting to come off of it. Also, make sure that you're keeping an eye on your chicken to make sure that it is done, okay? It should only take about 20 minutes. But it'd be safe to, if you poke it with a fork and the juice that comes out is clear, or you can cut into it and it's no longer pink or has that rubbery type of texture in the middle of it, then you know it is done, okay? The first couple times doing this, your chicken may get done a little faster than your sauce. And that's okay. The trick is to kind of get it timed right so that it's all done at the same time. This is the same time that you would want to get your noodles all boiling, okay? So get your water boiling vigorously, add your salt and your olive oil, and then once, add your noodles once you get towards the end of your Alfredo sauce. I don't know how comfortable you are with multitasking in the kitchen, so I don't want to get you going with too many things. But once you get comfortable with doing that, you want to kind of get everything all going at the same time so that your sauce, your noodles, and your chicken are all done at the same time so that you can plate them and go ahead and serve them. Okay. Once this does start bubbling, everything kind of moves a little bit rapidly from then on because we have to constantly be adding and stirring because we don't want things to burn onto the bottom, okay? So just be aware that once it does start bubbling, you got to kind of move a little bit quick, okay? So that's why I have everything all ready to go over in my area here. Okay, and I can hear it. The bubble is coming. You will be able to hear it a little bit. You'll hear the simmer where the bubbles are kind of popping below the surface. Once it starts boiling, those bubbles will pop at the surface, okay? So that's the difference between a simmer and a boil. And I can still smell the butter and the garlic incorporated there. It smells delicious. It's actually making me hungry. It's so close. It's just not quite to that bubble spot yet. I almost had mine turned down a little bit lower than I usually do. But you notice I do keep stirring it, and I keep hitting the bottom of my pot whenever I'm stirring, just to make sure things aren't getting burnt onto the bottom. Oh, there we go. I'm seeing the first couple little bubbles. I don't know how well you can see them there through that. I don't know if the light is actually making it worse or better. But it is starting to bubble just a little bit right there in the middle. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to add my lemon juice, okay? So I've got about, 3 tablespoons there. Add that. I'm going to add my lemon zest. Okay, and I'm not going to quite add all of that, just for my flavor preference. Okay, and go ahead and whisk those in. Just adds a little bit of a different flavor to your Alfredo sauce. Okay, so once you've gotten all that mixed in, then it's going to be time to start adding your cheese. Just a little bit at a time, okay? So I'm going to take my cheese, and dump a little bit in here at a time. And then I'm going to mix it well. Let it all melt together. And then I'll add some more. So when you're doing this, be kind of careful as it clumps together. About 1 tablespoon at a time. So I'm just going to kind of shake that into here, okay? And then I'm going to whisk it really well. I don't want to have the clumps from the flour. So I'm going to 1 tablespoon. I'm going to whisk it together. Then what that flour does, it starts helping all that cheese and the cream stick together with it, you know, just kind of meld together the way it should. It's going to make it start to thicken up, and it'll get smoother. Until I get to the consistency that I want, okay? So right now, it's not sticking to my whisk at all, and that's not what I'm looking for, okay? I want it to kind of ooze off of there. So I'm gonna add a little bit more flour. Like I said, just a tablespoon at a time. Then whisk that all together in there. And you can see my pot gets pretty full, so that's the importance of having a a larger pot. So make sure that you have the right size pot. Okay, I can see the consistency starting to change. Now keep in mind, as this cools off, it will thicken up as well, okay? And 1 more tablespoon. And that should be about all I need for flour. So I'm going to kind of sprinkle that around. Whisk it in really well. Make sure you're scraping the bottom of your pot. And I can see it thickening up now, okay? All right. This is also the time that I'm going to add my salt and pepper to taste. Oh, I overflowed a little bit. You can hear it sizzling. So you want to be kind of careful about that. Just going to wipe that real quick. cold rag, okay? Because I don't want all that cheese burning onto my stove, making a big mess, okay? So now I'm just gonna add some salt and pepper to taste. You can see it's boiling pretty good now, so I'm gonna turn my heat down. Add a little bit of pepper. A little bit of salt. I'm using the palm of my hand, right? Don't just dump it in there because you don't want to end up with it really super salty. And I'm just going to kind of sprinkle it in there with my other fingers, okay? So add that. And you can see that it's nice and thick, right? So you can see how it's thickened up, I hope. And I have my nice thick Alfredo sauce, all right? All right, I'm gonna go ahead and turn my heat off. So once your noodles are done, your chicken is done, you're gonna cut your chicken into its strips, okay? Add it to the top of your fettuccine noodles, and then put your desired amount of this Alfredo sauce over it, okay? So let's see if you can see. There we go. There, now the light's not shining off of it so bad. As you can see, that's kind of my consistency that I'm looking for. Okay, I'm going to continue to whisk it a little bit because I want it to be nice and smooth, but it's looking pretty good. All right, so that is our Alfredo sauce. All right, I hope that you enjoy it. And yeah, there's your chicken or shrimp Alfredo. Bon appetit.